All right. Hello and welcome to anyone who may be tuning into this video live, and also to anybody who may be watching it after the fact. That is assuming that I don't take it down. We'll see. I am Andrea Klunder. I'm your podcast boss, and this is a little bit of a behind the scenes of recording a solo episode of Podcast Envy, and I am just checking all of my settings here. So this is not a polished live stream. This is not a webinar. This is not any of those things. This is literally you getting a sneak peek behind the scenes of what it looks like and what it sounds like when I record my own solo podcast episodes of Podcast Envy. This particular episode is going to be what I call a Hey Andrea episode, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that is when I get to it. So in this moment, I'm just going to check a few things here. For example, my audio settings, mic, mix pre. Great. I am used to being able to hear myself in my headphones when I record. And at present, I cannot, which, hang on one second, let me try something different. Let's see here if I plug myself. Oh, great. Ha. I thought that might be the case. So in looking at video versus audio, which is the whole premise of today's topic, what I just discovered is, so originally I had my headphones plugged into my laptop directly, and I'm recording into this XLR style microphone, which is plugged directly into a Sound Devices Mix Pre 3 recorder, which may be a little bit more technical than what is interesting to you, or maybe it's super interesting. And when I did it that way, which is how I usually teach my online classes and whatnot, because when I'm teaching, I don't want to hear the sound of my own voice in my headphones while I'm trying to have a conversation or teach. But so that's how I normally have it set up for teaching. In the case of recording, I do want to be able to hear my own voice, because if my voice starts sounding like if my mouth starts sounding dry or something like that, I want to be able to hear it while I'm speaking so that I can remedy it if I'm not noticing it in the moment, or if I'm hearing a lot of mucus or something like that, or if I said something really, really loud or I laughed loudly and it sounded like it was clipping the audio levels, then I want to know that so that I can go back and do a retake of that particular piece of audio or that particular thing that I said. Or if I turn my head away like this and I'm suddenly off mic because I got distracted by something, then I want to know that I did that. And by hearing myself, I can hear that audio cue, and I can make a correction in terms of my proximity to my microphone, etc. In this case, when I switched my headphones to be plugged into, oh, yay, thanks, Karen. Karen says, sounds good right now. When I switched my headphones to the audio recorder that my microphone is plugged into, I can now hear myself and monitor myself. And what I heard that I didn't know was that one of my lights, this guy, which when I don't have my headphones on, it sounds silent. It doesn't sound like there's a thing. But when I have my headphones plugged into my recorder, I can hear that there is a very high-pitched whine happening whenever that particular light is on. I have another light over here, which is much smaller and not as bright, and that one is not making any unwanted sound effects. But my circle light was. So that was important for me to know, because had I not been monitoring in my headphones, I would have had that faint, high pitched squeal throughout my entire episode, which sucks. And which, rather than cleaning it out, you heard it? Okay, cool. So I would have had to re-record basically when I was off the live stream, because there's no way I would want to like filter that out. I know you can, but I always prefer to try to solve any audio issues on the front end when recording, rather than waiting for post-production. Oh, Alejandro heard it as well. So yeah, okay, cool. I'm not crazy, and this is useful to be sure that you're monitoring yourself. Yeah, I have no idea what that means. So anyways, in this case, because this episode recording will get repurposed as an actual audio episode of Podcast Envy in my podcast stream, the audio is way more important to me than the video. Fortunately, I happen to have a few remaining moments of sunlight in Chicago, so we're just going to go with this setup for now. But the topic for today is, should my podcast be on YouTube? And its related question, how do I leverage video for my podcast? So like I said, this is not a polished live stream. This is a behind the scenes of what it's like when I record my solo episodes. That being said, that if you do have any thoughts or comments or questions, you are welcome to put them in the chat. And even if you're watching this video as a replay and you have comments or questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat if you're watching it as a replay on whatever platform. We're currently, I believe, live streaming to LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. If all the little check marks that I see from StreamYard are accurate, then that is the case. And so in that sense, for sure, if you have any relevant questions for the topics, then let me know. And if you never even knew that Podcast Envy was a podcast, you can find Podcast Envy in your favorite podcast app, and tons of episodes in the past and tons of episodes in the future. This whole live streaming, a recording session, is an experiment. I have no idea whether I will love it or hate it. But if you think it's cool and you would love to see me record more episodes, solo episodes, interview episodes, let me know, because if enough people want me to do it, maybe I'll keep doing it, or maybe I'll just do it anyway. Who knows? I have no idea. But that being said, let me pull up my episode notes. What you will hear, see, observe is that I have notes here for my episode, and I may, depending on what I'm hearing or depending on what my energy levels are, I may switch things up. It occurs to me, actually, I'm already going to change something, which is that I usually record these standing up. So I'm going to, you're going to see some craziness with my desk is being temperamental. It's a sit-stand desk. And it only wants to go up bit by bit. Why do I stand when I'm normally recording? Is because it changes my energy levels. Oh my gosh, my desk is making me crazy. It's like if I hold the up button, it goes up and then it goes back down on its own. So I have to go up incrementally, bit by bit. Yeah, there we go. Ditch the chair. You don't record sitting down. What are you talking about? It's so funny that this topic of video is such that I'm giving you a first-hand example of why I don't usually do video, why I prefer to do audio, because it's like doing things on video just throws me off, because I think about things differently on video than I do on audio. I feel so much better standing for recording. This makes so much more sense to me. Can I get one audio file of this recording to practice my mixing process? No, I don't really send out raw files of my show to other people. But let's see here. Okay. Now I feel better. I'm going to take a sip of water. It's good to be hydrated. I'm going to give myself a visual cue in my waveform that this is where I'm starting the actual episode. Welcome to Podcast Envy. I'm your podcast boss, Andrea Klender, and today I'm going to start that over. Welcome to Podcast Envy. I'm your podcast boss, Andrea Klender, and today and by we I mean I, are bringing back one of my favorite episode formats, Hey Andrea. Hey Andrea episodes are where I directly answer questions from our vast community of podcast professionals. I'm hearing a lot of echo. All right, starting again. Welcome to Podcast Envy. I'm your podcast boss, Andrea Klender, and today Welcome to Podcast Envy. I'm your podcast boss, Andrea Klender, and today and by we I mean I, are bringing back one of my favorite episode formats, Hey Andrea. Hey Andrea episodes are where I directly answer questions from our vast community of professionals who podcast. I call them Hey Andrea episodes because that's usually how an email, text, or verbal question will begin. Hey Andrea, what do you think about? Hey Andrea, what's the best way to? Hey Andrea, if I wanted to... You get the idea. If you love the idea of picking my brain about your favorite podcasting curiosities, mysteries, and conundrums, please don't. Pick your brain is such a gross phrase. And if you ask me if you can do it, I will probably say no thanks. Ew, pick my brain? Ugh, where did that even come from? But if you send me an email that starts with, Hey Andrea, I probably won't be able to resist. And if I think it's a question our audience can learn from, I'll give it a go on a future episode of Podcast Envy. You can email me your questions at andrea@thecreativeimposter.com, linked in the show notes for this episode. Today, I'm answering a question that I have gotten from not one, not two, but many a podcaster in some way, shape, or form. How do I leverage video for my podcast? And its near cousin, should my podcast be on YouTube? But before I go to those questions, a quick mention for those of you listening to the audio podcast version of this episode. I did an experiment. I recorded this episode live on LinkedIn, Facebook, and you guessed it, YouTube, because, well, talking about putting your podcast on YouTube and not using YouTube felt stupid, to be honest. So that's what I did. I have never done a live stream of one of my episodes before, and I didn't really even announce it ahead of time or use the little social media functions to invite specific guests because I was quite certain I would hate doing this and never want to do it again. But if you happen to catch this and you happen to like the idea of watching me record Podcast Envy live on video on any of those platforms, well, let me know and we'll see. Back to our questions. I'm going to start with the second one. Should my podcast be on YouTube? Yes. This has been Podcast Envy. Thank you so much for listening. Oh, wait. You wanted more than just yes? Okay. Well, let's think about this. Yes, probably your podcast should be on YouTube. If you know anything about me, you know that I don't love stats and numbers. They don't mean anything to this theater kid's anecdotal brain, but suffice to say that the stats show a lot of people use YouTube every single day. Way more people are on YouTube than are listening to podcasts. I don't know if that's grammatically correct. Way more people are watching YouTube than way more people are on YouTube than are in the podcast apps. Also, YouTube is the second largest search engine after Google because well, they're basically the same. Keyword search in Google and YouTube equals awesome. Keyword search in most podcast apps equals wah, 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 wah. Why wouldn't you want to do everything in your power to make your podcast, and by extension, your brand and your business and yourself, as searchable, i.e. findable, as humanly or algorithmically possible? Ooh, I'm proud of myself for saying algorithmically correct on the first try. Well, time, resources, energy, effort, they're all finite. And it's hard to be able to do all the things that you could do or that you feel like you should do with your show to that end within your particular set of constraints. So, how you go about putting your show on YouTube is, that sounds really sad. So how you go about putting your show on YouTube is maybe the better and indeed more nuanced question than should you. Most reputable podcast hosting companies have an easy way of, at the very least, turning your MP3 podcast audio file into a video file using your cover art as a static image, layering the audio over the top and pushing it gently to your YouTube channel. Our preferred podcast host at the Creative Imposter Studios, Libsyn, certainly offers this in their social media integrations at the $20 per month and above level. And if you're still shopping for a podcast host, you can click the link in our show notes to get your first month of hosting with Libsyn for free, and they'll send us a small little thank you check for our referral. But in any case, the bare minimum is to check with your podcast host to see if you can do this through them. And of course, make sure that you have claimed your YouTube channel with a proper description, banner image, etc. And if your hosting company does not offer this integration, don't despair. Maybe consider switching? Even if you don't switch, you can also set up an integration like this with a third-party service like Headliner, another company we LOVE. Now, are all of the millions and billions of people on YouTube going to listen to your full-length podcast episodes with a static image of your cover art on your channel? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Like I said, this is the bare minimum. It requires little effort. And at the very least, if your episodes are... Like I said, this is the bare minimum. It requires little effort. And at the very least, if your episode titles are already juicy full of SEO-worthy keywords for your desired areas of expertise and authority domains, then yeah, it's a great way for a random Googler or YouTube consumer who is looking for the content or information you provide, who doesn't even know you exist yet, to stumble upon your show for the first time. And if your channel and episode descriptions are well written, at least now they know where to find your podcast if they want more. And if your channel and episode descriptions are well written, at least now they know where to find your podcast for more and for a better listening experience. Because believe me, Google will not send them nowhere when they type in their search query. And if they can't send them to your show because it's not on YouTube, they'll send them to your colleague or your competitor who is. Now, in terms of doing more than the bare minimum, how do I leverage video for my podcast? For ages, I have avoided or brushed off this question. How do I say that? For ages, I have avoided or brushed off this question, sticking to the story that podcasts are audio. one watches video podcasts. Why would I want to watch two talking heads having a conversation on video? I got stuff to do. I don't have time to watch your YouTube video, but I can listen to your podcast while I'm cleaning or waiting for the bus or driving, etc. Plus, most podcast apps don't even support video podcasts. They take up too much bandwidth. Video podcasts are a lot more. Plus, most podcast apps don't even support video podcasts. They take up way too much bandwidth. And video podcasts are a lot more work to produce. You have to worry about how you look, your lighting, your background, your clothes, and all of the same for your guests if you're having guests on your show. If you are an independent podcaster or a small to mid-sized business who is podcasting, you are already operating on a limited budget and bandwidth. Adding the element of video adds to the tech, the hardware, sometimes the software. It adds to the cost. It adds to the complexity. It adds to the number of things that can go wrong. Just think of how many times you've had audio issues with an interview, and now, well, you've just multiplied everything by a factor of video. That's not funny. Just think of how many times you've had audio issues with an interview, and now, well, you've just multiplied it by a factor of infinity. You've just multiplied it by a factor of infinity by adding video to the mix. Plus, I have a degree in video production, and that is precisely why I work in audio over video. Seriously, it brings up my not so inner perfectionist. I still get twitchy watching YouTube or TikTok videos with too many jump cuts. But I digress. Yes, the social media gods or demons, depending on how you feel about it, want you to put video on your channel or podcast. No. Yes, the social media gods or demons, depending on how you feel about it, want you to put video on your channel, your page, your profile, and they will reward you with views for doing it often, consistently, and in a way that makes people linger longer. And so incorporating a video strategy, whether it be on YouTube or elsewhere, is not an altogether terrible idea if you have the bandwidth and resources to do it well. The great news is that it doesn't necessarily have to look like recording full-length interviews on Squadcast, another one of our favorite service providers, or Zoom, or streaming your interviews live on StreamYard, or your recording sessions on StreamYard, which is the great news is that it doesn't necessarily have to look like recording full-length interviews on Squadcast, another one of our fave service providers, or Zoom, or streaming your recording sessions live on StreamYard, what I'm using right now, and then publishing your boring face, talking to your guest's face. I won't call your guest's face boring, with mediocre sound quality. As mentioned on a recent episode with social media pro Lauren Ramsey, CEO of Betsy Bash, your social media audience is an extension of your podcast audience, summed up together into your audience. And growing your audience on any of your favorite platforms and channels is good for the overall health and wellness of your podcast. And that is why, cue podcast angel music, this episode's podcast angel is our... This episode's podcast angel is our Podcast Envy Masterclass series. In the month of February 2023, I am teaming up with Lauren Ramsey, who loves social media way more than I do, to deliver a 1-hour focused virtual masterclass all about how to leverage video for your podcast. Lauren is brimming over with creative ways to incorporate video for a variety of platforms in a way that aligns with your brand, your audience, your budget, your strengths, and what you think is actually fun. You can submit your top questions ahead of time or ask live during the class. You can submit your top questions ahead of time or ask us live during the class. Our masterclasses are delivered via Zoom in an our masterclasses are Podcast Envy masterclasses are delivered via Zoom in an intimate how do we say that? Podcast Envy masterclasses are delivered via Zoom and are intimate insides by design. Right now, you can get 50% off your Podcast Envy masterclasses are delivered via Zoom and are intimate insides by design so that we can customize the content for your show. Right now, you can get 50% off your ticket with the promo code VIP invite. Go to thecreativeimposter.com/masterclasses and enter promo code VIP invite on Eventbrite. We've put the direct link in the show notes for this episode. Cue angel music fade out. Have a sip of water. All right, I won't make you wait for the masterclass to give you at least a few things to consider. 1, do have a strategy first. I am the worst when it comes to doing this for myself. I love to try random experiments like this live stream and see how they work, whether I like it. And I may never do them again, or I may discover something magic. But it's partly my job as your podcast boss to see what's out there in the realm of podcasting and offer you suggestions and solutions. You, on the other hand, don't have time to waste on all of that nonsense. You need a strategy. That said, number 2, do give your strategy enough time to track results versus effort versus enjoyability. Life's way too short and there are too many options out there to do business marketing tactics that feel boring or even dreadful. If you hate being on camera, don't be on camera. Be willing to try something, see how it sticks, and then once you've given it a fair shot, try something else. 3, find some other folks who are using video in a way that is fun, inspiring, refreshing, or interesting to you, and try something similar. There is nothing new under the sun. Don't steal their content, but be inspired by their approach. Do you like moving text with captions and bright colors over? Do you like moving text and captions with audio over the top? Do you like animations? Do you enjoy action videos of people's hands or feet doing a thing or going to a place without ever seeing their faces? Could you make videos of meditative nature scenes with your voice over the top? Could you make videos of meditative nature scenes with your voice over the top? Or do you love the raw and ready interactive nature of a good old-fashioned live stream? This is your call to action to consider how you might find a fun and useful way to leverage video for your podcast. And this is your permission to get creative. Resist getting stuck in a tiny box making a video. Resist getting stuck in a tiny box making a video version of your interviews, unless that's what really lights you up. Come check out the masterclass with Lauren Ramsey and me on February 23rd. We've got a ton of ideas for you. We are ready to answer this question even more in depth and custom for you and your show. And that's what I've got for you today on Podcast Envy. Why didn't I write a closing for this? Come check out come check out the Podcast Envy Masterclass with Lauren and me on February 23. Use promo code VIP invite and consider this your call to action. Think about how you might find a fun and useful way to leverage video for your podcast to grow your overall cumulative audience. And this is your permission to get creative. Resist getting stuck in the tiny box of making a video version of your interviews, unless that's what really lights you up. All right, I like that ending a little bit better. Let's see here. So that's it. That is what it looks like when I record a solo episode of Podcast Envy. Was very specific not to watch the video preview of my face while I'm doing that, because I know that as an actor and a performer, when I'm recording solo voice stuff, whether that be an episode, whether that be an intro for an interview episode, whether that be a promo for the Podcast Angel, which is the promo section of the episode, I know that I have a tendency to over-articulate my face in order to convey a certain type of energy and emotion into the audio of my voice for the recording. And sometimes I tend to use some physicality and gesticulation with my hands. It's another reason why I stand when I'm recording, is because the more I can use my actual body and my hands, the more energy I can infuse into my voice. Whereas if I'm sitting, I have a tendency to be a little bit more restrained. So for this particular show, I want to keep the energy high, a little bit humorous, and I have to have enough space around me so that I can easily wave my hands around and not accidentally hit the desk or hit the microphone or whatever and introduce other sounds. I have to be careful of like making too many sounds with my clothes and things like that. So those are all things that I'm kind of subconsciously listening for in the back of my mind while I'm recording. If watching this video of my process was interesting to you and you would love to see some interview episodes or anything else on any of these social media channels, that would be super cool. And yes, this is an example of one way that you could possibly leverage video for your podcast. It might be something that seems terrifying to you. It might be something that sounds super interesting and exciting to you. Then from here, I can let the raw video live on the social media channels. If I wanted to then take the recording of the video and edit it and put it a polished, edited version online, I could. I probably won't. It doesn't really seem super useful for me and for my strategy. But the audio version, for sure, I will go back and edit and take out all those moments where I paused and said something over again. I will add the intro and outro and music, and I will add the specific angel music that I have underneath the promo section, which we call the Podcast Angel, and add some audio processing and whatnot to that. So that is the process. And I thank those of you, Alejandro and Karen, who joined live. I thank anybody else watching the replay and anybody who was watching live at any point whose name I didn't see pop up on here. And let me know what you think. Is this something that you would continue to watch? I'm open to suggestions and feedback. All right. Thanks so much, and I will see you soon.